Do you remember a lady by the name of Sophia Petrillo? She was the matriarch character from the Golden Girls. Do you remember her? Do you remember when Sophia used to tell a story that was so audacious and unbelievable that you didn't believe it, and yet you so wanted to? I have one of those stories this morning. Picture it. Tulsa, 1999. In my small village, we were bored. We were depressed because it was a very miserable time in 1999. It was a time when the people of our nation still had a home phone number. And connected to that home phone was this machine that when you weren't home, it took your messages for you. Do you remember those? We still have one. You know, we were so naive in those days that the best name we could come up with for that impressive device was the answering machine. It was a time when getting on the internet meant you could prepare a full breakfast and read the entire newspaper before your network would connect. It was before texting or Twitter or YouTube, and it was 5 full years before Facebook. God, we were bored. That year in 1999, after many weeks of being very sick, after several expensive procedures, extensive testing, in and out of the hospital, I was diagnosed with a condition called carcinoid tumor syndrome. I had an encapsulated cancerous tumor next to my liver, and it was inoperable and growing. The doctors told me that the size of your cancer tumor is the size and shape of a large strawberry. I will never understand why healthcare professionals want to compare something so hideously repugnant as a cancer tumor with something so fresh and beautiful and wholesome as a God-given piece of fruit, and yet they do. About a year later, my oncologist said that it had grown into a new size and shape, and he compared it to the top of a pineapple, again with the fruit. And so when my friends would ask me, what does it look like today? I refused to tell them it looked like fruit. I told them that it looked like the home of SpongeBob SquarePants. Until the word cancer became a part of my everyday vocabulary in 1999, I was living the life. I had 2 successful businesses with my partner. We were raising our 9th foster child. I had a nanny, a cook, a limo, and a driver. And I was living in a 5,000 square foot home, complete with an ocean view in the middle of Oklahoma. I want to make sure you are still with me. 2 weeks after my diagnosis, my partner said, I didn't sign up for this, and I can't do it with you. And in a matter of 1 month, I lost my health, my ability to care for our children, my financial security, my dignity. And just when I thought that it couldn't get any worse, my mother, who was my very best friend on the planet, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And 10 days after her diagnosis, she died. My breaking point, however, came 9 months later, when, after more issues and more complications and more testing, I wound up in the hospital again. And the doctor said, on top of your cancer, you have multiple sclerosis. And I experienced for years thereafter the effects of paralyzation in my limbs and the immobility of my mind. To the degree by which you allow, you receive. In 1999, whenever my home phone would ring, and it always did, and it always almost meant the same thing, that I would have to tell that story again. I dreaded phone calls. And I actually recorded a message on my home answering machine that went a little like this. This is Chaz. I'm not available at the moment because I'm somewhere between very sick and almost dead. If you'd like to leave a message, feel free to do so. I'll get back with you, or not. During my treatments, I developed a symptom in which the sound of running water made me extremely nauseous. I want you to think about that for a moment. It was so severe that I would turn on the faucet or the shower, and I could only stand for it to drip. Think about how long it takes to take a shower with only a drip, or to make a pot of coffee with only a drip. I had the capability to allow more to flow by simply turning the tap, but I couldn't stand it because I was so ill. To the degree by which you allow, you receive. Have you ever had a 7-second moment? A 7-second moment. One of those moments that somehow expands in dimension. It allows you to not only ask a question, but to sit in it at the same time and understand that the solution for it already exists. And all of that happens in a moment. It gives you a glimmer of hope, and it takes you right back to where you were. For me, one moment that lasted 7 seconds demonstrated that I could not influence wellness by focusing on illness. Many of you know I had the honor and pleasure of being the feature story for last month's Daily Word. And I brought some of those, and they're out on the welcome table for you if you'd like to take one. But that article that I wrote explains my 7-second moment. A time when there was just a twinkling of clarity when I realized how certain I was about what I did not want. I did not want cancer. I did not want MS. I did not want exhaustion. I did not want running water. I'd been given almost all of my attention to everything that I did not want. I was so focused upon this tumor that was growing inside of me that I gave no attention to the trillions of cells that were working all the way around it. I explained in that article in the Daily Word that on one of the rainy days in Oklahoma, remember I don't like the sound of running water, I laboriously made my way to the bathroom to either get sick or to take one of the 62 pills a day that I was taking then, or to inject myself with another shot of interferon in my stomach or my thigh. And as I was making my way there, almost crawling, I somehow tripped over my mother's cosmetic case. It was one of the many things that I had just inherited after her death that I had not dealt with yet. And as I began to pick up the contents from the floor, I raised my head to just the level of the vanity mirror. And I noticed, as I looked into the mirror, that everything behind me was reverse. Everything that I saw was reverse. My left was now my right, and this gaunt expression that I saw in my face was the very reverse of what I wanted, of what I knew. And so somehow, in a 7-second moment of clarity, I picked up my mother's eyeliner pencil from the floor, and I began to write on the vanity mirror. And I wrote the words, "As a child of the Most High, it is natural for me to experience health, and well-being. A 7-second moment in time created such clarity for me that I realized for the first time that not only was I repeating a story over and over that was counterproductive to which I desired, that of wellness and clarity, of vitality and energy, of health and well-being, that my very thought process in those moments before were just telling this insignificant story to all the other cells of my body, thereby prohibiting them from doing what they knew to do, which was to allow that which I wanted. To the degree by which you allow, you receive. In the 5th book of John, a lame man lay beside a reservoir of water. Many of you know this story. That water pool, that reservoir, was named Bethesda. And this man who had been lying there, waiting for his healing, had been laying there for 38 years, praying for healing. The common belief at that time was that an angel would come by the water and trouble it. In our words, we would say, stir it up. And the first one into the water would be healed. About that time, a man named Jesus walked by. He was about to do a speaking gig, if you will, near the pool of Bethesda. And he noticed the man lying there, and he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" And though that man had been lying there for 38 years, wanting healing, he did not immediately say yes. Instead, he gave his well-rehearsed litany of suffering. And he said to Jesus, "Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred by the angel. I am so weak that all the others get into the pool before me." John 5:6 says, when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" I have long believed that that particular question that Jesus asked that lame man is probably the most significant and noteworthy utterance that we are privy to in all of the accounts of the Gospels. Remember that Jesus had walked on this earth for some time, healing the sick, causing the blind to see. He didn't need to ask someone permission. He didn't even need to ask him if he wanted to, and yet he did. Some of our translations say, "Do you want to be made well?" or "Do you want to be well?" Think about the word well-being for a moment and reverse it. Do you want to be well? In a 7-second moment, I wanted to be well. And I wanted to be well with total indifference to sickness or even to health. I wanted to be well. I wanted to be well. Like this man who was laying by the pool of Bethesda, I had prayed fervently for a cure for my cancer and MS. And in a 7-second moment, I came to understand that my cancer and MS needed no cure. Now hang with me for just a minute. I came to see very clearly for me that no disease, no illness needs a cure. Diabetes needs no cure. Alzheimer's needs no cure. Cancer needs no cure. Neurological disorders need no cure. It is we who are praying for the cure. You see, cancer and MS and any factor of disease, whether it is in our body, our relationships, our organizations, whatever the case may be, it is whole in its very beingness. My cancer and my MS were doing just fine. It didn't need to be cured. I was the only one who was sick. And our languaging, and yes, I just verbed a verb, didn't I? Our languaging is a little off balance, and it's no wonder that we are sometimes. Because we pray for one thing, and yet it doesn't really make sense. My MS and cancer needed no cure. I needed to be cured. I wanted to be whole. I wanted to be healed. It is our body that wishes to be cured. It is our mind that needs not learn anything new, but rather unlearn a whole lot of things that we've taught it. In its very state of being, disease and illness are complete. It needs no remedy. At the heart of all struggle and discomfort is the belief that one must get rid of that which you do not want. We must obliterate or destroy any discomfort in order for healing and well-being to take its place. And yet, if we believe that we must push against what we do not want so that in its absence we will be well, it's not making sense, is it? When we are promised that we are whole and we are complete. In the choice of its being or not being, of being well or not well, of being abundant or not abundant, of being joyous or not joyous, the choice itself presents both the question, allows you to sit in it, and presents the solution. And to the degree by which you allow, you receive. If it's not a story of truth, it may as well be a myth. And the myth that I believed was that my illnesses were greater than the whole of my being. In that 7-second moment, I realized that this was not a story worth continuing. My illnesses were incurable only because I believed them to be. My body's ability to heal came from knowing that it was possible, and then allowing well-being to take its natural place. I understood that my energy was flowing where my attention was going, and it was going right here to this cancerous tumor. All of my moments throughout the days, weeks, months, and years were flowing to this tumor and to my MS. And I was giving it power in every breath that I thought of it. And when I chose to redirect my focus on the trillions of cells that were doing their job all the way around it, here's what happened. When I focused on the tumor, it grew. Many of you may be gardeners. If you have 2 flower beds in your backyard and you nurture and water and love and talk to one of them, and you totally ignore the other, which one is going to thrive? And that's what was happening in my mind and in my body. I was directing all of my attention, all of my talk, all of my nurturing to this tumor. And when I redirected that focus on all the trillions of cells around it, from the tip of my toe to my hair, I noticed that it too had to grow. That's the law. And it had only one place to grow, right over the tumor. To the degree by which you allow, you receive. You know, in her healing process, Unity's co-founder Myrtle Fillmore taught us that we do not inherit illness or disease. In her healing letters, she wrote this: "We have ceased eagerly to appropriate and analyze and assimilate and make use of the life of spirit through our thoughts, our words, our acts, and our living habits." At the time of my diagnosis, however, I didn't know of Unity, never heard of it. When someone mentioned it, I just assumed it was Unitarian. I had never heard of Myrtle Fillmore, and I certainly didn't think that when I took just a moment to write something on the bathroom mirror with my mother's eyeliner pencil, that I would one day be calling that an affirmation. I have rarely referred to my journey as one of healing. I refer it as it is a moment of awakening. A moment of awakening, and like Myrtle's journey, it was not an instantaneous end to my illness. It was rather a beginning of a journey, a process, an understanding. 3 chapters later in the book of John, Jesus shared the wisdom, and I might even call it the law, that every master teacher from the Buddha to Jesus to Martin Luther King Jr. has all said, "The truth will set you free." There is a saying in my office, and we use it with our coaching clients all the time. We often say that everything that comes out of your mouth is a story. So if you're going to tell a story, you might as well make it a good one. If your story is one that you are fighting for health, whether that be physically, emotionally, in your relationships, financially, spiritually, whatever the case may be, you could begin to tell a different story. You could begin to feel a more gentle approach to the story. If your story is that you are struggling your way to joy or prosperity or wholeness in any area of your life, you still have a choice. And it may be as simple as choosing to tell the story differently. It's my experience that one cannot fight his way to healing. We heal our way to healing. You cannot struggle your way to joy. You joy your way to joy. You cannot struggle your way to prosperity. You prosper your way to prosperity. You wholly live your way to wholeness. It is choosing at its best. And you may find in a 7-second moment that your old story is so irrelevant to the light of truth that it's no longer worth the conversation you've been having with it. Choose to tell your story in a different, more gentle way. For to the degree by which you allow, you receive. The lame man received it when he took up his bed and walked. Myrtle received it when she told a story of healing that we are still repeating a century later. I received it when, in a 7-second moment, I saw a future of traveling the world and sharing a message of hope and healing and focusing on the truth and understanding that the truth really is the equivalent to freedom. To the degree by which you allow, you receive. In 1999, we called it an aha moment. Today, we call it an awakening. When you look into the mirror of your life, and to the degree by which you allow yourself to nurture your mind, body, and spirit, you have a choice in any 7-second moment to tell a story. Choose to tell a story as inspiring as that of Myrtle Fillmore. Choose to tell a story as peaceful as Chaz Wesley. And if you are so bold, choose to tell a story that is so audacious and unbelievable as that of Sophia Petrillo. Good health and namaste. Thank you for having me.